Good morning or afternoon, wherever you may be joining us today, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us for our monthly technical webinar series. Today's webinar is going to be presented by DRMcNatty, and it's going to be on implementing Primavera P6 Professional, EPPM, and team member for a public works agency. Before we get started with the presentation, there's a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to bring to everyone's attention. First and foremost, all call-ins are automatically muted in order to preserve the quality of the audio for all of our attendees as we are recording this session. If at any time during the session today you have any questions, you can submit them in the questions box in your GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar box. And time permitting, we're going to try to answer as many of those as possible. We also may have some that come offline as well too, and we will add those in. Lastly is going to be a follow-up for everybody that is in attendance today and everybody who registered who could not make today's webinar. We are going to put together a follow-up email, which we will include a copy of the presentation, a link to the recording of the webinar that you can share with your colleagues, and we're going to put together an Excel sheet that's going to have all questions that are submitted both online and offline as well too, with all the answers to those, as we may not get to all questions today. We're going to get ready to start the webinar, and I'm going to turn it over to DRMcNatty for the presentation.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning or afternoon. So a couple things here. The safe harbor, the statements made in this technical presentation are based on our current knowledge of the tools and our unique experiences. So we kind of have our safe harbor statement here. DRMcNatty, products and services, project control, system implementation. So I kind of, a lot of people are pretty familiar with what they do. Here's a tool matrix that covers all the different products that they support and the tools. They're an authorized partner, trainer, and implementer, as well as providing training and supported project staffing resources. So again, my name is DRMcNatty. Obviously, related to the owner of DRMcNatty and Associates, Don McNatty. I currently started my own consulting business. I reside on the East Coast. And actually, real quick, the client that we're using in this example, we're not going to name, but it's currently a project we are working on. And that client is actually a DRMcNatty client. They have subcontracted through me. The client is on the East Coast, but I've been doing all the implementation and training as well as some of the support staff, who I'd like to say thank you to DRMcNatty, which has been very helpful on the IT side of setting out all of this up. So our abstract here is we're working with a large public works project. They have hundreds of projects, dozens of project managers, and it can be a daunting task for any project manager. So I'll kind of let you go ahead and read this, but we felt this would be a good webinar based on its a way that we implemented everything in a very short time period. It was pretty much over about a 3 to 4 month period. And also, at least for the first time in my career, I've gotten a chance to use team member. And so we kind of collaborated and talked, and we thought that this would make a good presentation. So at the bottom there, I'll demonstrate the initial needs of the Public Works Agency and how we implemented a phased implementation strategy, how it was approached, and how we implemented it within a short time frame. So our agenda for today is we'll give a little background info on the Public Works Agency. The challenges that we encountered, and then taking those challenges, finding a solution, which we did what we call a phased implementation. Then selling the vision and the training. And we'll talk about the team member application, how that was set up, and how you need to use EPPM to do that. The team member for project managers on how to update their activities, EPPM team leaders, how they approve those activities, project manager and team leader user guidebooks that we created, and then EPPM dashboards and reports using BI Publisher. And then time permitting, we should be able to have some questions. So a little background on the Public Works Agency. They provide drinking water and wastewater treatment services to county residents and businesses. The department manages 4 water treatment plants, 8 wastewater treatment plants, a biosolids facility, and administrative and field support facilities. What we've been working with is their water department. They have it broken down into potable water, wastewater, and reclaimed water. Pretty good sized population that they service, as well as the amount of square miles. And they provide 49 million gallons of clean, reliable drinking water each day. So obviously with that much, servicing that many people, and with our infrastructure the way it is, you're obviously going to have a lot of projects. So some of the information that we got from them, this is some information on the number of projects they have in each phase. They break it down into the planning, design, procurement, construction, and closeout. A lot of these graphics you're going to see here in the next few slides are PowerPoint presentations that the client would present at the end of each month. And what we'll kind of talk about is how a lot of this information that they put into this PowerPoint was actually done manually. And that was one of the challenges that we'll talk about, that they wanted to get this type of information that we're seeing into Primavera and be able to do graphical reports and custom reports. There's a little more information, some of the information again that they're tracking. Again, they've broken it down into the, the linear feet of pipe that they've installed through the year for portable, reclaimed, and wastewater. The bottom graphic talks about the assets installed or rehabbed or replaced, fire hydrants, pump stations, valves. This graphical information is great, but again, it was being done manually. And that was one of the things that they were looking for us to help them with, was to get this information in an easier format, basically to be automated. Here especially was some important information that they had to show to upper management or their directors, the risk level that they were encountering on a lot of their projects. Below that, obviously, the performance index, your SPI, cost performance index, SPI, schedule performance index. And then on the right, the level of effort to deliver these capital improvement projects. And the amount of, you can see the overall program, standalone, sub-projects. So a lot of great information that they were showing us. But again, it was being produced in PowerPoint, and we sat down with them and tried to figure out a way that we could get this a little more automated for them. So one of the things that we discussed with them is they needed a simpler way and more streamlined way to collect data from their project managers to update project schedules on a monthly basis. The project managers were using Excel to update their schedules and send to their team leaders each month. So they were using Excel pretty much exclusively when updating schedules. The team leaders would have to do a manual input update of the information into P6 Professional, which they're using to manage all their projects, from the Excel update sheet. So this was one of the big areas that they were really looking for help with. Project managers manage multiple projects, and the team leaders who oversee those project managers manage multiple project managers. So we're not talking about 1 or 2 projects here per project manager. Several to a couple dozen sometimes for some project managers. And the team leaders had, again, multiple project managers that they had to manage. So it was a lot of manual entry to keep this up. And that's kind of what they told us, is that there was just too much time spent creating Excel and PowerPoint and monthly reports for upper management or their directors manually. And they wanted to try to eliminate that using current technology. So what they're using first and foremost is P6 Professional as the scheduling tool. They're managing around 809 projects in P6 Professional for just the water side of things. They do keep their schedules pretty simple, and I wanted to kind of explain this because we're working at a level 2 summary. They're pretty much keeping it high level, and you can see here design and planning, procurement, construction, closeout. And you can see a couple of the activities in here, very high level. We're not getting into a lot of the detail into a full-blown CPM schedule with a long critical path and things like that. They're keeping it pretty simple, and a lot of it is for reporting purposes. So our challenge was we needed to replace the Excel schedule update sheet. But we didn't want to introduce a more complicated and timely solution to the project managers. The way we approach it is they are our customers. Even though they all work for the same utility company, they essentially became our customers. And we must have their buy-in from the first and foremost. They're pretty much what I would call boots on the ground. And those, whenever implementing something like this, you really need them to have the biggest buy-in. We had to train approximately 30 project managers on a new process and a new software, and which I think a lot of people are familiar with is we resist change automatically. And, that Excel sheet that they had been using, they had been using it for quite a while. So we knew that we had to come up with something that was simple, easy to do, and was not going to impact them time-wise each month, adding to the amount of time they had to perform their schedule update. And the project managers do not have time to become project schedulers using P6 Professional. That was one of the biggest things that why we went with team member is because, which we'll explain a little bit more later, is that there was no time to make these people schedulers in that sense. And so we needed something that was very easy to use. Then we needed to train the team leaders on that new process and new software also. And the new process needs to be expedited and running in a few months to report to their upper management or their directors and the progress and show results with new reporting capabilities. Our time frame was about 4 months for our implementation schedule. So we had to move on this pretty quick. So next what I get into is what we call selling the vision and training. And these are the 3 main components that we're using. We're using P6 Professional as the scheduling tool, P6 EPPM or the web, for being able to see our dashboards, portfolios. But the other important thing here too is that when using the web, everything that you do is done, all the administrative and everything is all done through P6 EPPM. Unless you're running P6 Professional standalone, once you're using EPPM, all of your administration is done through there. So we'll talk a little bit about that, especially when we get to the team member functionality here at the bottom. So these are the 3 softwares we were using and had to train everybody on. So continuing, our project managers, they're responsible for managing multiple specific assigned projects and update the schedule activities monthly in team member. So that's what that was what their role was going to need to change from the Excel sheet to updating in team member. We then had team leaders, which are head of specific departments overseeing multiple project managers, and they're responsible for reviewing those project manager monthly updates in EPPM. And then we have a manager of project controls who's responsible for the monthly report to upper management and the directors, which he also reviews all of the team leaders and the P6 professional and EPPM. So everything's rolling up from the project managers to the team leaders and then ultimately to the manager of the project controls. And what we came up with is a very simple way to collect this information. And starting from the left, the very top box, the team leader in P6 professional assigns activities to the project managers by resource or owner, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Then, so that meant that we had to train our team leaders on P6 professional. Then in the team member application, the project managers had to update their activities that were assigned to them to the team leader. And then in P6 EPPM, the team leader reviews and approves those activities from the project manager, which ultimately go back to update P6 professional. And those activities are updated in the schedule after the team leader approves the activities. Now, there's a lot of variables that could happen, and we're not going to get into a lot of that. We're keeping this pretty summary, high level. There's a lot of functionality that I'm not going to get into just because of time's sake, but this is the basic concept of what we were looking to do. And then that last bullet, where activities are updated in P6 professional, then that information could be taken and pulled into the EPPM for the dashboards and portfolio reporting, and also which we'll touch on BI Publisher. So our solution was a hosted phased implementation. So phase one was we had to set up the hosting environment and servers. They did decide to go with a hosted environment through DRMcNatty due to some issues internally. It was a lot easier. Again, the three softwares were P6 Professional, P6 EPPM, and P6 Team Member. We had to wade through some software and IT issues. Basically, the client was using their laptops. We had some firewall and security issues along with some Java issues that we had to kind of vet out. And then we had to set up a team member training environment, test that environment, and that was a training database. So what we did with phase one, before we started doing all the training, is we had a team member training environment that was a dummy database that everyone could work in, and we would not be using any other live information. Phase two was the biggest part of the implementation, spanned about a couple months. We broke it down into team leader training for P6 Professional, which was one class with 8 students, and it was a typical 3-day P6 Professional class. We needed to teach the team leaders how P6 Professional worked. Our project managers went through team member training. Again, we had 30 students. We broke it down into 3 classes. We staggered those classes 1 week after the next. 10 students per class, and those were 1 day. We're going to dive down into this in a little bit more detail. Then we came back to the team leaders and did team member training with them, which was a 1-day class with the same 8 students we started with, and that was, again, 1 day. Then during that, we were collecting information, testing, and we were creating team member and team leader user guides after all of the training is complete. We'll touch base on that a little bit more, but basically we were creating a user guide to hand out to everyone after the training was done. And then also we're collecting the data for EPPM dashboards and BI Publisher custom reports. Again, we were looking to automate a lot of this information. Phase 3 was going live with the project managers to start using Team Member for their monthly updates and not use the Excel sheet. And that required us connecting to the client P6 professional database, which was then linked to P6 EPPM. Then we needed to create custom EPPM dashboards and BI Publisher reports. And then ultimately it was leading to a demonstration to their upper management or their directors on how all phase 1 and 2 were implemented along with phase 3 once we went live and actually started having the project managers update in team member. So the team member light was chosen. It's a quick, convenient, and easy interface for project managers to status their work. The team members don't need to be a scheduler to use the interface. There's some good communication functionality that you can use between the project manager and the team leaders through discussions, email, photos, and documents. Pretty simple preferences to determine which fields are available for the updates. We chose % complete and remaining duration. And again, that was, a lot of the training we did, we taught them the basics of scheduling. You can view, update the steps, codes, notebooks, and user-defined fields in Team Member. And there is a functionality for the iPad, iPhone, device application. We are not currently implementing that, but we have tested it and actually had it. It does work. We did it on our iPhones and iPads. We're not currently implementing that here, so I'm not really going to touch on the mobile device, but we did set it up, and it does work on a few of our iPhones. So to focus on the first training we did, which was the team leaders, was P6 professional training. There was one class, 8 students for 3 days. We put them through the typical 3-day training class on Primavera P6. This was meant to give team leaders the understanding of how P6 professional works and how to assign a project manager as a resource or owner. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's really a key functionality to the project managers and team members. They have to be assigned as a resource or an owner in P6 Professional. The team leaders needed to understand the basics of scheduling and how P6 Professional, EPPM, and the team member application all work together. Most of them had never used P6 Professional or had a scheduling background. But understanding some of the nomenclature, the team member application, we felt it was a good idea to give them a 3-day training course on P6, and not only was it showing them how the application works, but basically, a lot of the language that is used that's pretty common with scheduling. We also had to prove to them that the team member solution was viable and could replace the Excel sheet being used by the project managers. And this was focused, what we called role-based training. We only had the team leaders in this session, and that was all. And it was good because you can get everybody in the room together. They're all working at around the same level. They had a lot of the same questions. And a lot of good discussions came up during these training classes. And again, it was role-based for just the team leaders. Then what we did is we did project manager team member training. And again, we had 30 students total, so we had 3 classes of 10 students, 1 day each. The project managers needed to learn the team member application. This was the scariest part for the PMs and the most important time to sell the vision going forward. People automatically resist change, and we must prove the vision that this was something that was going to work. Automatically, you get pulled off of your normal duties and put into a training class, and you're being introduced to a new way to do things. The resistance sometimes can be pretty overwhelming. So we had to find a way to make that easy. So the first thing we wanted to do was a 1-day training class. We didn't want to do 3 days for the project managers. We felt that was too much. And we broke the session into 2 sessions, or broke the training into 2 sessions in 1 day. The first session, we gave them a basic of scheduling and P6 professional and team member. Again, understanding the nomenclature, how team member kind of looks and feels. And then in the afternoon, we actually did team member overview and hands-on training. We chose some projects that they had existing from their P6 live database, and we actually brought those projects in and used those as examples. So the information they were reviewing in the training was somewhat familiar. And again, we had to prove to them that the solution is viable and can replace the existing Excel update sheet being used. And this was a focused, role-based training for just the project managers. And during these 3 training sessions, we were looking for what we called champions. We were looking for people that were very, not aggressive, but they were willing to put themselves out there and say, hey, you know what, this looks like it's pretty neat, pretty easy to use. And, you know, I had 3 people approach us after just 1 training class saying, hey, if you need someone to help with it, I'd like to volunteer. Because we had mentioned that we wanted to find 5 people to do the testing before going live. And then our team leader, team member training, we bring that team leaders back for one class of the same 8 students for 1 day. And the team leaders need to learn how the team member application works. We wanted them to perform the same things and duties that the project manager would do. The team leaders will need to learn how to review and approve the project manager activities in EPPM. So we had to put them through EPPM approval training, showing them how it all worked. And then we also, the team leaders provided input on selecting those total of 5 project managers to test out the system before rolling it out live to all 30 project managers. We wanted them to kind of, we told them, break it, find issues, find problems, come back to us, let us know what you like, what you don't like. And that had a lot to do with us putting together, you know, our training sessions and our user guide. This time period also, we used it to work out any final issues with the vision, IT issues, and just the overall implementation before going live. We created team member and team leader user guides. We used a lot of the input we got from everyone in the classes. We created both a project manager and a team leader user guide. These are basically step-by-step guidebooks with screenshots that reinforces the prior training and gave us a chance to include anything that might come up in the discussions we had in all the training classes. Then at the same time, we were collecting data for the dashboards and custom reports. We needed to do custom reports, needed to be produced using the data from P6 Professional. Custom dashboards and reports we needed to be automated. We needed to stop the manual entry from monthly reports to upper management or the directors. And BI Publisher, we used BI Publisher to create a custom report that mirrored an Excel report that was being updated manually. And we're now using the Reports tab in EPPM. This report is automated, pulling data from P6 Professional. They still wanted to use this Excel sheet. It was very familiar to certain people that liked the way it looked, but we wanted to automate that instead of having it being done manually. And that towards the end of the presentation, we'll show you how we did that. So for the team member, the first thing is you need to set it up in EPPM. Again, that is your, where all of your users are created and so forth. So each user under the administration tab must have the team member box checked to access the team member application. So here we've got myself listed in here. And then under the module access tab, there's a team member box that needs to be checked. So that's the first thing that has to be done in EPPM under the administration tab. Each individual project in the enterprise project structure needs the team member section to be updated for team member to be functional. So what we had to do was each project that was going to be associated with a project manager, we came into the projects tab, and there's a little sprocket that comes up for each project, and we had to go to the set project preferences section. And here what we had to do is we had to select how we wanted to set up team member. And in this case, the first tab is called status updates. And you can see here, I'm not going to go through all of the settings just because of time permitting, but obviously, we went through this and we vetted it. We did find out one thing, that the assignment level button, if you check that and also check the activity level, you will get duplicates in team members. So one of the first things we did was we turned off the assignment level left it at activity level, made sure we had as the owner and primary resource assigned, and then that way we use these fields, activity percent complete and remaining duration. We didn't want to use the assignment field here, actual units or remaining units. We felt that was confusing. We wanted to keep it simple. So we used activity percent complete and remaining duration, which is pretty familiar to most after they went through the training. Next, the team member activity updates tab. We wanted them to be able to add and delete steps, also be able to use notebooks. We did not want them to assign themselves to activities. That's being done by the team leaders. And then the final tab, very important, the status reviews. You have to check these boxes, and then that enables you to choose who the reviewer is. So for each project, we had to know who the project manager was and who their team leader was. And then what we were able to do is go in and select the team leader for that project so that when the project manager updated his team member, it would go to the correct team leader. The team leaders log in via portal page. So again, this was a hosted environment. DRMcNatty uses portal pages through remote desktop protocol with the link to P6 Professional and EPPM. Again, it's a hosted environment. So the team leaders, once they were trained, we showed them how to log into both P6 Professional, which is what's called the terminal server, and then the web, which is EPPM. And one of the first things that had to be done, and I kind of wanted to show this here, is that for a team member to work correctly, each of the team leaders had to sign in to P6 Professional, go to that specific project, and assign the correct project manager as a resource and owner in P6 Professional. And this automatically put those activities in the team member's queue when they logged in. And project managers need to be set up also as a resource in P6 Professional, in the resource dictionary, and they must be associated with a P6 user ID and account. And here I show an example here with kind of a dummy project here in P6 where we have the resource and the owner columns displayed, and then you can come to each individual activity in that project, and then the team leader would have to assign that project manager, and we had them do it for resources and owner. And really that was the key to make it work for the project manager when they log in the team member. And that's what we're looking at next, is the project managers log in via, again, the same portal page, but they only have access to team member. They don't have credentials to log into the terminal server or the web server. And what we kind of did when we trained them was we showed them to just use the team member application. So this is a screenshot. The team member opens to the My Activity screen. And really there's only one screen. And what we liked about this is it was very simplistic. We did have a couple people in the training that were somewhat experienced schedulers and kept looking for more stuff. And we said it's not there, and there's a reason why. It's meant to keep it simple. The activity screen, it's called My Activities, and they're assigned to the project manager. And you can get a drop down on the top left of all your different projects. And then you can select on a specific activity. It highlights it with a yellow band, which shows you that you're highlighted on that activity. So this is what the team member application looks like when the project manager logged in. The team member activities can be sorted by clicking the drop down into all projects, and then activities can be viewed by individual projects. So you had a couple options here. You could, in what I would call the team member queue, you could view all your projects, or you could select a very specific project, and then it would show you just the activities for that project. Because again, our project managers were associated with multiple projects. There's a couple other things up here, some sorting capability. You've got status, time frame, resources, and sort by. So there's a couple of other ways that these are built-in ways to be able to view and group your activities that you've been assigned to as the project manager. The project managers can use the discussion, email, and starred functionality to communicate with the team leader. So all of these activities, when the project manager is logged in, there's a discussion tab. With anyone that's familiar with P6 Professional knows that you can use the discussion tab to create a discussion between people that have access to the same project and activities. There's an email functionality. The starred button allows you to highlight that activity. And then you have a check to the right, which I'll talk about in a couple slides. So basically, each activity is represented in the team member queue. You can highlight, and then again, by highlighting on one of them, it highlights it in yellow so you know which activity you're highlighting on. For updating activities, very simple. This is one of the reasons why we liked this. So I'm going to go through a way to update an activity to 100% or in progress. And then when you're done, you can just click the send button. So the project manager would log in to their team member. They would see their activities in their queue. Then they could click the start button on an activity if it has started. They could also use the checkbox to the right, which would mark it 100% completely already. So if it's in progress, you could use the start button. And then if it's complete and it finished on those dates, you could use the checkbox. But also, you can see here that we bring up a window where you can actually change the dates to the actual dates that the activity was completed. We can see that it's got 100% complete. For in progress, you can also use the percent complete or remaining duration, almost similar to kind of what you do in P6. And that's a lot of the reason why we gave not only the team leaders the training on P6, but also a kind of a quick crash course for the project managers is to understand what all this means if they hadn't done it before. You know, remaining duration, percent complete, actual start, actual finish. And then once the project manager is done with all of their activities, there's a save button, which they would then click, and that save button would then take those activities and push them to the team leader, and they would drop out of the project manager's queue. So only activities that are left are pretty much activities that are either in progress or have not started. But anything like 100% complete would drop right out and go to the team leader. And that's what we're looking at here is the team leader logs into EPPM and clicks on the Approvals tab in EPPM. All of the different projects are listed on the left-hand side. You can select an individual project or multiple projects. And you can see that it's the one I've got highlighted. It's a team leader approval project, and it's got 3 activities. And then on the right-hand side, each activity is highlighted, tells that team leader what its old dates were, what its new ones are, its actual start, its actual finish. So each activity is identified in here. The other thing that can be done is each of the team leaders, if they have questions, comments, there's an email and a discussion feature that are available to communicate with the project manager. And the status of all activities can be viewed on screen. So here, looking at an activity, you can click a button where I'm showing the line go straight across to the email. And so, you know, if the team leader has a question, they can email. And the way it was set up is that it would bring up their Outlook. They use Outlook for all their email. And then you could also start a discussion on that activity, which would also update P6 automatically on that activity. So a couple of different ways that you can use to communicate, either through email or discussion. And then the team leader could also see how many they have pending, how many are held, and then also there's an accept all updates, which we'll kind of look at next. The team leader can select 3 different selections on that activity. They can accept the activity, they could hold that activity, or they could override it. Accepting it basically accepts it as is. Hold puts that activity on hold, and it keeps it in the team leader's queue. And then override allows them to actually change, maybe if the dates were different or something and they needed to override the actual start or actual finish, they could do that. And then once all of those updates in the team leader's queue here are done, they can click accept all updates. It tells you how many you have. And then that will automatically update P6 Professional and update the actual schedule. And then once those activities have been reviewed and given a status of accept, hold, or override, the activities will update P6 Professional, as I said, and will be removed from the team leader queue unless the status is held. And you can see here that there's one here called held. And if you actually click on that in the software, it actually brings up that activity. But as long as there's no other approvals left, it will actually tell you no updates pending. And then there's also a button here to view held updates. So again, coming back, accept, hold, override, those are the options you're giving or are given, and you need to work within what you have here. Again, we had a couple schedulers that said, well, what if I want to suspend and do some other things? We're not using that type of functionality. We're trying to keep it very simple. So we trained them on what accept does, what hold does, and what override does, and then accepting, and those are the 3 statuses that they were trained to use, and really nothing else. We wanted to keep it simple. We did have questions on, we would have to handle other things on maybe a case-by-case basis, but for the most part, we tried to keep it pretty simple. So in the background, what we've been doing the whole time also is we're creating project manager and team leader user guides. And all of the screenshots and call-outs showing the sequence for both project managers and team leaders that you've seen so far in this webinar are very similar to the user guides that we produced for the client. We produced a team member project manager update procedure. I've kind of blocked out some of the information that we didn't want to share at the moment. And then also a team leader approval update procedure guidebook. What's nice about these is that we didn't create them until after the training, until we had kind of all the buy-in and input, and we kind of worked through and made sure everything worked. The vision was good. We were able to replace what we wanted with the Excel sheets and use team member. And this guidebook was nice. And also what was good was, some of the people didn't go live till almost a month and a half after the first training. So it was also kind of a nice little refresher for them. So ultimately what we did after inputting everything into P6, we created custom dashboards and reports. And again, a lot of this stuff had been being done in Microsoft Excel manually. So what we wanted to do is we created portfolios. In this example here, it's called Active Water Projects. And that's actually the portfolio name that I have highlighted. And if you look at the pie chart, there's our wastewater, reclaimed water, portable water. It's a nice little pie chart which gives us specific information. We've got the project statistics. And what's nice here is that we're pulling all this from P6 into EPPM into dashboards. We're planning on creating what we want to call director dashboards where they can log in and see specific information. Wouldn't necessarily have the ability to change a lot of it, but this would be able to, they would train them to log in and be able to see information in this graphical format. Adding on to that, here we've got our, our earned value that's coming in, our index performance, specifically our SPI and our CPI for the different schedules. And what's nice is that, again, a lot of this information used to be coming from Excel. And that's actually where we get into this screenshot, which is custom reports using BI Publisher to eliminate that manual entry. And what we did is we used what's called the Reports tab in EPPM. This has to be turned on. There's a little bit of things that need to be turned on in the background. And then what we did is we collected the information, and this Excel sheet actually, it mirrors the Excel sheet that the client was using to update manually. And what we did is we used the coding, and we had someone internally from DRMcNatty create this report. And actually now, instead of having to dump all this and copy and paste, this Excel sheet that they wanted to keep using is actually being produced right out of EPPM, which obviously is linked to all of the P6 data. And actually what's nice is that these indicators for risk and budget and SPI and CPI, it automatically turns them based on how the report is set up. So this was a custom BI Publisher report that we're using out of EPPM. And again, the ultimate goal here was to eliminate having to update this manually. So that's all I have for the webinar. We're 45 minutes in or so, so if we had any questions or if you wanted me to go back and review anything. But other than that, I'd like to thank you for participating, and let's see if we have any questions. Dan?
Yeah, Jonathan, we had some questions that were submitted, and actually the first two questions are very, very similar. The first one that's submitted, do you need a full P6 license to have access to Team Member? And that kind of coincides to the second question, which is Team Member an add-on to P6 PPM or EPPM, or is it part of a P6 license?
You want to answer that? That's kind of actually your cup of tea.
Sure. So when you buy the full license of P6, which is considered EPPM, you do get a Team Member access license to it. So you can also purchase a P6 Team Member only license. But for Team Member to work, you do need EPPM set up and running because it has to be configured through EPPM. If you just buy a P6 PPM or the professional only license, Team Member does not come as part of it. It does have to be the full P6 license to get that Team Member. And this also kind of coincides with another question that had come in is, how many users are using Team Member versus P6 Pro versus EPPM in this implementation? And Jonathan, you can answer that one.
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's, at the Team Member level, there's 30 project managers, and they are accessing Team Member, and that's it. That's all they are trained on and able to see. There's 8 team leaders who are accessing P6 Professional, also P6 EPPM, and then there is one project director who accesses or has access to all of them. But you've got 30 project managers using Team Member, and then 8 team leaders using EPPM.
All right, great. Another question just popped in. When you're assigning resources and owners at the project level, can you use the fill down feature if there are a lot of assignments?
Good question. Let me go back to that screenshot and I'll show you where that is. Yeah, I've been using P6 for a long time. Trust me, I was looking for that too. All right, so it's two parts. The resource column, I cannot use fill down. But what I can do is if I click in the resource column, I get that window that comes up in P6, and then I can use Shift and go down to the very bottom and then hit the green plus button, and that will drop everything in the resource column for me. In the owner column, I can use fill down. So if you have to do a lot of them, which we did, that's first thing I did in the resource column is fill down was grayed out, but we found you can shift and use the green plus button. But then again, as I said, owner column, yes, you can use fill down. Perfect.
Next question that came in is, what is the cost of a team member license? I'll take this one. If you're buying only the team member license to use for just users that are going to be accessing team member, it's going to be about $1,100, and that license includes access to team member, access to project reporter, and you also get access to timesheets, which is a piece of the team member license. And one other question that came in, can you share a copy of the presentation? Yes. We are going to put together a follow-up email for everybody that had registered and attended this webinar that's going to include the slide deck presentation, link to the recording of the webinar, and then all these questions that have been submitted are going to be put into a question and answer sheet.
And then Dan, real quick, I wanted to, there's a couple things at the end here. Upcoming events, there's a CMAA in Vegas, October 14th to 16th, 2018. And then the Construction CPM Conference, great location. I lived in San Diego for a long time, so I'm looking to go back. January 20th, 23rd is the CPM Conference in San Diego. So I wanted to show everybody those two upcoming events. And then also, DRMcNatty has a monthly newsletter called The Loop, and keeping you up with the latest news, events, especially the webinars and so forth. So you can sign up on their website at the address below. Dan, that's all I had. So I'll sign off myself, let you finish off. But thank you, everyone, for attending. If you have any questions, let us know. And if you need any more information on what we're doing with this implementation, we'd be happy to talk to you about it. But again, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Perfect, Jonathan. Thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate everybody attending and taking time out of your day. It's about 6 minutes before the top of the hour, so we're going to give you about 6 minutes to float back into your day. Any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us at any time. So thank you again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at next month's webinar.